Hey everyone! This week I have a special guest joining me, Alphia Williams. We will be discussing the movie Heaven. It's the first of 5 movies in the Casteel series, based on the books by the notorious queen of smutty gothic horror, V.C. Andrews. This was one of the last books she wrote before she died, and it was published in 1985. The girl on the cover looks too much like a young Shannon Doherty to be a coincidence, and I wonder if young Heaven was modeled after the young actress who would have been in Little House on the Prairie around this time. It's funny because Jason Priestley actually plays the villain in the second Casteel movie. We all know him as Doherty's twin on 90210. Anyway, I will begin by giving a brief summary of the movie and book, and then giving some thoughts on the two. Then Alphia Williams will share her thoughts. Please check out her channel, At Your Daddy House. We have done reviews together before on both her channel and mine. If you enjoy hearing reviews on V.C. Andrews and Lifetime movies, please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode. I will link to Alphia in the video description below. So Leigh Casteel is a teen girl who lives in a cabin in the wilderness with her 4 younger siblings and her mother and father. Her family struggles to get by. Her father is resentful of her, and she eventually learns that this is because her real mother was a rich teen runaway from Boston named Leigh Van, who died giving birth to her. Heaven's father never got over the loss of the first wife he called Angel. Heaven's family is not respected by the local folk. In the movie, it's said that it's because Heaven's grandfather sold alcohol to the mayor's 15-year-old son before he got into a fatal car crash. In the book, there's no mention of that. Everyone just looks down on the Casteels because they're poor. Heaven loves school and wants to get a college education so that she can make something of herself. She falls for a boy from a well-to-do family named Logan Stonewall. Logan makes Heaven feel like she's someone special, even though she suspects he treats her as some kind of charity case. Things take a turn for the worse when Heaven's stepmother Sarah up and abandons the 5 children after giving birth to a stillborn baby. In the movie, the baby's all twisted. In the book, the baby is described as having half a head, which is really grotesque, and I read this book when I was 14 years old. The baby was stillborn due to the fact that Heaven's father, Luke, was sick with syphilis. I'm not sure if it's mentioned that he has syphilis in the movie. It is in the book. So Heaven's beloved granny dies around the same time as well. Leigh Casteel is not fit to raise 5 children on his own, so he decides to sell them off to 4 different homes. Heaven ends up with a woman named Kitty Dennison and her husband Calhoun, who goes by Cal. Kitty is an absolute train wreck of an individual and treats Heaven like she's her personal housekeeper who has to do everything perfectly if she wants to escape a tirade or a beating. Heaven turns to her new father Cal when he offers to shelter her from Kitty's outbursts, but this turns out to be the worst thing she can do when he begins to take advantage of their closeness by being inappropriately intimate with her. So here are some changes the movie made. First of all, in the book, the youngest of the 5 Casteel children are Keith and Jane, and they are 8 and 7 respectively. In the movie, they are Keith and Janie and are referred to as twins. Changing Jane to Janie is not a major alteration, but it does eliminate a funny little backstory of how Jane Ellen Casteel got her nickname. Heaven treats her younger sister as though she's her own daughter, and in the book, Fanny is so jealous of all the attention Heaven lavishes on the baby of the family that she explodes one day and says that Jane doesn't just belong to Heaven, she belongs to all of them. Jane is our Jane, not your Jane, and from that point on, everyone calls Jane our Jane. This tells you everything you need to know about Fanny Louisa Casteel in one quick anecdote. In the book, Heaven learns about her real mother at age 10. In the movie, she's older when she learns the truth. She's maybe around the age of 15 or so. Her stepmother Sarah can be quite brutal at times. There's a horrifying scene in the book where Sarah punches her 13 or 14-year-old son Tom in the face for tracking mud into the house. The momentum causes him to slam into the wall, and a jar of honey falls on top of him. He brushes the incident off by making a joke, but Sarah feels guilty and apologizes, not wanting to lose the love of her older son. In the movie, she does go crazy after having the stillborn baby, but before that, she seems to be a decent enough mother. She began having kids around 14, I believe, so she's a young mother, likely uneducated, and dealing with a philandering husband who likes to go to Shirley's place for women on the side. Leigh Casteel is a mean man and doesn't spend much time at home. When he does, he lavishes attention on his favorite daughter, Fanny. Heaven says in the book that son Tom is actually his favorite, though he longs for a look-like son with dark hair. Tom is described as a ginger in the book. In the book, Heaven actually has dark hair, unlike her biological mother who had blonde hair. In the movie, Heaven is the redhead and her biological mother had dark hair. This is not a minor change. The reason why the sequel is called Dark Angel is because Heaven is the dark-haired version of her blonde-haired angel mother. The title of the sequel makes no sense without Heaven having dark hair and her mother being a blonde. I don't think it's made clear in the movie that Tom is only a few months younger than Heaven. In the book, they're described as being more like twins, in fact, though in reality, they are half-siblings, but extremely close. So close, in fact, that I'm not the only person out there who got some weird vibes from them. In the book, Tom says at one point that if he could have married his sister Heaven, he would have, but marrying a relative is not an option, even though this is the backwoods, so I wonder if that's a rule that's actually set in stone where they're from. Either way, Tom's backup option is their teacher, Miss Steele. Miss Steele is not in the movie, and that was disappointing for me because she was the children's guardian angel in the book. I'm not sure what her true motivation was. She does seem to have a little bit of a crush on Heaven's father, though she seems to lose interest in him after Heaven informs her that her pa likes to go to Shirley's place. Miss Steele allows Heaven and Tom to take home all the books they want, which is such a treat for them because they love to read. She also buys the kids ice cream after church, and on one particular Sunday, she insists on taking them all out to lunch. Though Heaven suffers from the sin of too much pride, she eventually accepts the offer under the condition that she can pay Miss Steele back at a later date. I want to add that Heaven comes into quite a bit of money later on in her life, but there's no mention made of her paying Miss Steele back that I can recall, so that's a thread that was kind of dropped. The movie cut out Miss Steele altogether. One of Heaven's big flaws in the book is her pride. She refuses help from well-meaning individuals time and again, even at the risk of her siblings' health. She does not want anyone to know the intimate details of her family's struggles because she finds it shameful, and also she feels it is her duty to fend for herself and to take care of all of their needs so that she can grow up to be a strong individual. In the book, there are some heartbreaking scenes where her younger sister Fanny and even her brother Tom question her stubborn attitude. Fanny, unlike Heaven, has no shame and will scream from the rooftops that she is hungry, cold, and in endless torment. She also is clearly a disturbed child, constantly going into the cloakroom with the boys at school. She's only about 12 or 13 in the book at the time. In the movie, it's the locker room, but same thing. In the book, Heaven soon comes to realize that maybe her sister, despite all of her adolescent confusion, understands their situation better than Heaven does. Oh, and here's a funny thing. Even though Heaven would rather roll over and die rather than take handouts, in the book she agrees to go burglarizing local farms with her siblings, stealing other people's livestock and groceries. But hey, when you've got starving children in your home, it's complicated, and I get that. I don't, justify stealing, but I understand why they would be driven to that. It's just funny because Heaven has so much pride. I understand the movie had to rush things along, so I understand why the selling off of the children was done without all of the dramatics in the movie, but in the book, it was this drawn-out thing. It begins with a father coming home to tell his kids, on Christmas Eve, I believe, that he has a Christmas present for them. And it turns out the gift is to sell off one of the younger ones to a rich couple, Rita and Lester Rawlings. Mr. Rawlings is an attorney who makes Luke sign an official agreement. Of course, Heaven doesn't view this as much of a gift, but rather an absolute nightmare. The couple ends up taking both Keith and Jane because the littlest siblings can't stand to be separated from each other. In the book, Fanny is so excited when she finds out that she is the next one to be sold off and that her new mother and father will be the wealthy Reverend and his wife. The kids don't know how creepy Reverend Wise is at this point, whereas in the movie it is hinted at that he's a creep when Heaven and Fanny are at the cemetery on the day of their grandmother and stillborn siblings' services. In the book, Fanny throws herself at Reverend and Mrs. Wise because she can't wait to be far away from the cabin and all of the suffering. In the movie, she seemed a little more distressed to leave Heaven. It should be noted that Heaven was the Reverend's first choice in the book, but her father warns him away from his oldest, saying that his younger daughter is an absolute sweetheart, whereas the older one is a bad seed. Obviously, Leigh Casteel has always had it out for his oldest child because of the fact that she led to his first wife's death, and so he says a lot of awful things about Heaven that aren't true. In the movie, he is really mean to her, and there's actually a scene where she sits at the breakfast table and he orders her out, telling her she's not allowed to eat with a family. In the book, though, he's not just mean and a drunk. Some of the things he says and that other people say about him indicate that he might even be capable of murder if pushed to that point. He tells the kids at one point that if he ever sees their mother again, he will blow off her face. And Granny tells Heaven when she's only 10 years old that she wishes Heaven wouldn't talk back to her father and risk him silencing her for good. And Heaven does threaten her father with a poker on a couple of different occasions in the book as he's selling off his kids. On the second occasion, her father dares her to do it, but Tom stops her, not because he wants to protect their father, but because he's afraid their father will kill her. I didn't get the impression from the movie that the father was truly dangerous, just basically a no-good loser and a bully, and I don't remember Heaven being that aggressive in the movie either. In the book, Heaven and Tom had been planning to escape with Fanny to save themselves from being sold off. The father learns that they have been attempting to get away and threatens them, saying that if they try, he'll just track them down. After Fanny leaves the cabin, their father blocks the older two siblings' exit. Tom is sold the same night Fanny is, and he is bought by a farmer who looks him over like he's some animal, asking him really gross questions about himself, like we're dealing with and not just an under-the-table adoption. In the movie, Tom tells Heaven he's going willingly and will send her money. In the book, he puts up a fight, and it's a heartbreaking scene to see the two cruelly separated as their father holds on to Heaven like he'll wring her neck if she dares move. The way it's written, she's compared to a chicken being gripped around the neck. Luke goes a while before selling off Heaven in the book, and Logan even stops by the cabin at one point to check up on her because all of the kids have been missing from school, suspiciously, which will happen when you've been sold off by your father. Heaven tells him what's been happening while her father is out of earshot, and Logan actually stands up to Mr. Casteel, asking him probing questions, looking like he might actually step in and help his girlfriend out, but nothing comes of it. In both the book and the movie, there is a scene where it looks like Luke is about to do something inappropriate with his daughter, who's about 14 now. In the book, the grandfather stops him and tells his son to get his daughter out of the house if he's that tempted by her. Luke is defensive at first, acting like he has a right to do whatever he wants with her because she belongs to him and she's old enough to take her mother's place. In the movie, Luke snaps out of some kind of delusion that Heaven's her mother and realizes that he needs to send Heaven away before he hurts her. The movie kind of softens the characters. The father is mean and a drunk, but he's not the absolute devil like he is in the book, and this makes it easier to believe him when he turns his life around later on. I like how the movie tones down Fanny's dramatics because she could be a little too much at times. In the book, there's a scene where she actually prances around without a shirt and pants on, right in front of Logan. Clearly a very mixed up kid. But overall, I did enjoy some of Fanny's antics in the book. There's a scene in the book where Tom goes out hunting and says he won't be back until he's got food for them. And Fanny's like, "So long, Tom, nice knowing you," basically telling him just what she thinks of his hunting skills. In both the book and the movie, Heaven ends up being sold to Kitty and Cal Dennison, but in the book, she is given a choice between two different couples, and she chooses the Dennisons. In the book, Kitty is described as having red hair and loving the color pink. For some reason, I picture her looking like Peg Bundy from Married with Children, and apparently other fans have had that same exact visual as well. In the movie, Kitty is played by Julie Benz, and she's this cool, pretty blonde. In the book, Kitty washes Heaven in a Lysol bath on her first night there because she's paranoid about getting hill dirt in her clean house. Heaven is afraid her new mother is going to mess up her hair, but Kitty gets offended and assures her that, as a hairdresser, she knows what she's doing. In the movie, Kitty's a dental hygienist for some reason. Cal is a novelist in the movie, but in the book, I believe he is a TV repairman. In the book, Kitty makes Heaven sleep between her and Cal in their bed for a few nights before Cal gets it in his head to make Kitty jealous by cuddling with Heaven, and that's all it takes for his wife to order Heaven onto the sofa bed. In the movie, Heaven is given her own room right up front, and there is only a brief mention of Heaven possibly sleeping in bed with them on one occasion, but the subject is ultimately dropped. Kitty does force Heaven into a scalding bath in the movie in a moment of insanity, but overall, Kitty isn't as abusive in the movie as she is in the book. She's still awful, I won't lie, but not nearly as bad, and that might be because the movie is condensed, and so it's not therefore this prolonged assault on Heaven's body and dignity. Later on, Heaven will say, Kitty was abused as a kid. V.C. Andrews loves to use that, excuse of, oh, they had a horrible childhood, so that's why they are the way they are. And also, she had a lump on her breast that she didn't tell anyone about, so she was worried about cancer. She did end up having breast cancer. And so Heaven later goes, oh, well, she was just anxious about having cancer. She was probably on pain medications. In the movie, she's on pain medications, so that's kind of the explanation why she is the way she is. In both the book and the movie, Kitty destroys Heaven's precious doll that she inherited from her dead mother. It's a portrait doll made to look exactly like the late Leigh Van Vereen. And there's a particularly horrific scene in the book where Heaven's teacher forces her to take home the pregnant class hamster Chuckles, despite Heaven's warnings that her mother won't be pleased about it. And sure enough, Kitty finds the hidden hamster, slaughters it, and leaves its bloody corpse in the bathtub for Heaven to find. I'm not surprised that scene didn't make the cut. Put in all of the child selling and incest that you want, but leave the poor defenseless animals alone. What was especially horrific about the scene was the way in which Kitty tries to gaslight Heaven into thinking she only imagined the murdered hamster. Oh no, she has no clue what her adopted hill trash daughter is rambling on about. Then Heaven comes back into the bathroom a little later and the tub is spotless, like nothing ever happened. Reading these books as a teen in the 90s, they probably seem ridiculously outlandish to me, but now that I'm older, I realize that, sadly for many, this is probably their reality. Near the end of the book, it is discovered that Kitty has cancer and is dying. At that point, Heaven does feel a little bit softer toward her, and Kitty, was abused as a kid, so there you go, it all makes sense. In both the book and the movie, Heaven and Cal have an inappropriate relationship, but in the book, it's clear that Heaven feels manipulated into being with him because she's desperate for a loving father figure and someone to protect her from her new mother's violent outbursts. But in the movie, it makes it seem as though Heaven is more of a willing participant. Logan does turn against Heaven in both the book and the movie when he finds out about what Cal did to her. And in the book and movie, Heaven leaves town so that she can stay with her biological mother's family in Boston. Overall, the movie sticks to the main points of the book, but it doesn't come anywhere close to having the same emotional impact that the book did. I really found myself getting invested in the book characters, turning the pages to find out what outrageous thing someone is going to do or say next. The movie just felt really rushed. I'm not sure how much time passes from the beginning to the end of the movie. However, the characters of Kitty and Luke are more easily redeemed in the movie because as bad as they aren't as awful as the characters in the books, so that's something the movie has going for it. I preferred the utter insanity of Kitty and Pa Casteel, but maybe you don't have to redeem them in the end. V.C. Andrews always had to make you feel sorry for her villains. It was one of the things she just always did. In addition to always having kids, being abused, and, incest. I recommend the book over the movie, but don't read it at 14 like I did. Back in the 80s and 90s, all the girls were reading these books at 12, 13, 14, but on top of dealing with heavy subject matter, these books are really complicated. They don't always come out and tell you that abuse is abuse. Many times, characters will rationalize really awful behavior and glorify it because it's their norm, so it helps to have a more adult perspective when reading these stories. I give the book a 4 out of 5 and the movie a 3 out of 5. And now I will turn the mic over to Alphia. Thank you for joining me today. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this movie, especially since you haven't read the book, so it'll be interesting to hear what you thought of the movie having not read the book.
What's up, everybody? Thank you so much, Jennifer, for letting me tune into your channel today. We are going to be discussing V.C. Andrews' movie Heaven, and let me tell you about this. This is a doozy, and I am so excited to sit down and discuss with you again about this movie. We learn in the movie that Heaven is not an ordinary girl, and that the woman that raised her was not actually her real birth mother. Her real birth mother gave birth to her when she was a baby, and she sadly passed away, and we learn why her father is so mean to her. And it comes from even in the more as the movies go on, you learn more and more about Heaven, and I 10 out of 10 recommend. I think V.C. Andrews came up with a brilliant idea. I am not sure or aware if it's about her life, but I really kind of am convinced that it is about her life. well, not her life, but somebody in her family. Like, she knows something, but I understand some people's family will sue them. But let's talk about Heaven. Let's unpack this. Heaven is currently still in high school, and her sister Fanny are really, really close. And what happens to Fanny in this movie is so, so sad. She is actually, okay, I'll wait to hold off on that one. I am going to be giving some spoilers, but not too much. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people have watched V.C. Andrews' movies and read most of her books. So let's unpack. So Heaven is in high school, and her sister Fanny are in school together. Basically, she's made fun of because of what happened in her family. Her grandmother ends up telling her about why her dad mistreats her, about her mom or whatever, and takes her to the grave. She's like, your dad dig this hole with his bare hands, and he really loved your mother. So Heaven's mother that raised her is currently pregnant. She already has Fanny, her brother, and her set of twins, which is Heaven's little brother and sister, and they all currently all get given away. Like, basically, like, the dad like sells them after the mom runs off, after she had her baby, and her baby sadly passes away after she gave birth to it. He or she, I don't remember if they said it in the movie. I do apologize about that one. But, and Heaven had to see it, the baby being born, and what had happened. And her grandmother passes away. Her dad's mom passes away in the movie, which is super sad because she was sick. And that's when the grandma kind of went, well, not the grandmother, that's when Heaven's mom kind of went cuckoo or whatever, after she lost her baby and all the stuff that transpired. And she was always left alone because the dad was like, he would go out, like, and drink or whatever, and then come home or whatever, and he'll be like days on end, because when he came back, he found out his mom was buried, and his mom was buried in the cemetery, but not by the house. She was buried in town. And the strangest thing happened when he did give his kids away. First, the kids was taken away. The first two young children, the twins, was given to a family, and Heaven didn't know what was going on. And then her brother was shipped off because he was still in school, but he really wasn't, like, he's the type of person that, he really wasn't into school like that, but he liked to farm. He liked to use his hands, so he was shipped off to work on a farm. And he told Heaven he would write to her, and it was like so sad because they're all siblings. They like grew up together. And then Fanny was given away. Fanny was given away to the pastor, and I could tell right off the back the pastor was crooked. But what he did is the ultimate crucial thing. And you're supposed to be a man of the cloth. He essays Fanny, and he impregnates her, and then he has his wife think that she's HOE around town, and somebody is the daddy. And it's crazy how when Heaven finds out. So Heaven gets shipped off to Kitty and Cal. Now Kitty is in love with Luke. Luke is Heaven's father, and she's always been in love with him, and she is married to a man named Cal. Cal is a writer, and he writes at home, and Kitty takes care of the bills. They live comfortable. Kitty's mom, we learned that she does not like Cal. Cal is very nice to Heaven when she first arrives or whatever. It looks like Kitty was gonna be, I'm gonna tell you something. Actually, it looked like Kitty was gonna be, but if something like kind of be nice, but you knew she had an agenda, and that agenda was to be a bia. And she was, at first she was kind of like, one of those, like, nice, nasty people, covered it up. And she cared about Heaven, and she did some crazy stuff to Heaven. She made Heaven clean, and some people's like, what's wrong with cleaning? Like, just some of the stuff she said. Like, she told her, like, when she cleaned the bathroom, she was like, you didn't clean it right, so clean it again. So Cal saw how she was talking to her, and she's like, well, you work on your book. And she goes, I'm going to work. So she went to work, and he was like, I'm gonna help you, Heaven. She's like, no, I cleaned the bathroom. She said, Kitty would get mad like last time. He's like, no, she's not gonna find out. So he turns some music on, he turned the record player on, and they start dancing and having fun and cleaning together. And you could tell that it was like they're bonding, but that bonding turned into something else. It turned into emotions, and I would say lust, not love, because, well, Cal thought he was in love, but I think Heaven was just looking for escape because she never had anybody to really ever love her. And she did like a guy from in the previous movie. His name was Logan. He was a new student, and she really started liking him, and she wanted to write to him, and she told Kitty she wanted to write to her brother. And Cal brought her a little, I can't think what they're called because I knew about it when I was little. It's basically like folder of an envelope and some paper and a pen and some stamps. I can't remember what they're called, but he gave Heaven one as a present, and so she could write and to her brother, and she was writing to Logan, and Logan never ever got none of the letters, which is really, really sad. And I don't think her brother got any of the letters either, but Heaven kept writing to him because she thought that he was just ignoring her, but he never got letters. I think that when she was giving to Kitty, I think that she wasn't sending him off, because we did learn later on that Kitty read one of her letters and asked her about it, and then Kitty started tripping, and it was just a mess. Cal ended up spending her birthday with her because Heaven had never had a birthday, and that was really, really sad. How you never had a birthday? That I just wanted to hug her at that moment when she said she like really never celebrated her birthday or whatever. And he took her, gave her a picnic, and they gave her a cake or whatever. But she really did fall for Cal, but I think it was because she didn't hear from Logan, so she was very vulnerable. And we learned that Kitty starts getting really, really sick, and she got cancer, and she knew about it already, but she said she just didn't want to remove one of her breasts, and she ends up passing away. And before she passed away, she told Heaven, I give you my blessing to be with Cal. She said, I already knew about it. And Heaven was so sad because she didn't want to lose somebody else again, because Heaven has already been through enough. She lost her sister Fanny, even though Fanny did not pass away, but Fanny was given to the pastor, and she ends up seeing, because she gets to go home to go see everybody, because she went to go see Logan. And because when she goes home, she actually, when she went back to her hometown, Kitty's mom lives in like the town or whatever, and she goes to see Logan, and Logan is very nasty to her, and his mom says something very nasty to her, and she goes to the pastor's house to go see her sister because she hadn't seen her sister in a while, and her sister opens the door pregnant. Can you just imagine somebody that you grew up with as your sister and that's pregnant, and you're looking like, you're not like this, what happened? And she was like, it happened like the first night we was here. He's done it so many times, and she conceived a baby. And it was just so sad. And in the second movie, I cannot wait to talk about that one, because there's something I want to say about Luke the dad. Like, it's like so sad. I felt so bad for all those kids. My heart went out to them in the second movie, because it was just something, I don't want to give it away for this video, but she was like, Heaven, like, things change, basically, like she doesn't want to talk to Heaven about what happened or whatever. And I like how when Kitty died and at the funeral, Heaven addressed the pastor, and he tried to be like, oh, you shouldn't show your face here, because he was like, you shouldn't show your face here, and she was like, you're supposed to be like, basically she tells him like, you done conceived a baby with my sister, not consensual either. And he was like, it's like basically like he didn't know what was going on, but it was crazy. Like, this movie was a lot. And Kitty's mom called Cal and Heaven together while her daughter's in the next room dying. And she's like, you will never show your face in this town. Basically, like, she's going to tell everybody. And she did. Like, people at the funeral was looking at them crazy. And I'm looking like, why y'all looking at them crazy? Well, let's talk about the pastor. What the pastor doing? Because, like, come on now. He looked like, because when he came to pick up Fanny, he knocked on the door. And the screen door. And he was like, my wife prayed about it, and God has sent us a blessing, because his wife couldn't have children. And I wonder what the wife, we saw a glimpse of her, because she had Fanny's baby, and that was in the second movie, so we really didn't get like a good glimpse at her, because I want to see what she looked like. And the reason why I say that is because I wonder, did she like really like, was she one of those women that didn't really fix herself up because her husband didn't want it, and he was trying to like throw the Bible, like women are not supposed to like be seen and not heard, like is just crazy, because this man really did impregnate a young girl and thought it was okay, and then wanted to throw Cal and Heaven's in like you were messing with an underage girl, and then try to say, oh, it was one of the guys in town. Like, yo, it was crazy. Heaven went through a lot, even at school. The teacher was mean to her because she corrected her about where thou art Romeo, and she told her basically how she's supposed to say it, and she basically went in on her. I'm like, what kind of teacher is this? And you have some teachers like that, and I really feel bad for Heaven. Heaven has been through hell, and in the next movie, I cannot wait to talk about that. But I want to thank Jennifer again. Shout out to you. You are amazing, and I appreciate you for letting me come on your channel and talk to you. And that's all I have.
Thanks again so much for stopping by my channel today to give your review, Alphia. I really appreciate it. You have some really great thoughts about this movie. Also, I feel like you filled in gaps that I left out in my review. So that's great. I hope you all enjoyed the review. I do recommend this movie, but I strongly recommend the book, so long as you're old enough to appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone.